A fish does not realize that it's swimming in water because it has completely normalized its environment. Likewise, if people are born within an environment where in which ignorance has been completely normalized, then ignorance becomes their norm. Once ignorance has been normalized, people will accept the unacceptable, they will justify the unjustifiable, and will believe the unbelievable. They'll even believe things that literally insults their own intelligence. To our detriment, this is what has been done to we African Americans through white social engineering. It's why many of us now accept the unacceptable narrative that we made the N-word ours and that using it now ridiculously empowers us. It's why millions of us now justify calling ourselves by the N-word, although there is no actual justification for doing so. It's also why millions of us now believe the unbelievably ridiculous premise that a Bible written by our proven most ungodliest enemies throughout history contains the true words of God. And that although it was brutally beaten into the blood-soaked minds of our enslaved ancestors, many ridiculously now insist that it will now set us free. These beliefs literally insult our own intelligence, but they are believed by millions of Black people. Unfortunately, this is our hidden reality. It is the hidden reality of what the white society has done to Black people. The reason why they did this to us is because the white society's exploitation of Africans has provided it with an era of which it has flourished most throughout history. To allow this era to end would be directly against the interests of the white society, especially given the fact that the white society's dependence upon Africa's natural resources is never ending. Therefore, unlike at the conclusion of World War II, when the less than 12-year Jewish Holocaust came to an end, when the US government and the UN contributed massive financial support to rebuild their lives, there was no moral obligation to do the same for we Africans. Although the African Holocaust lasted hundreds of years longer and resulted in millions of more deaths, when slavery was abolished, America, Great Britain, and many other white nations that benefited themselves greatly through their brutal exploitation of Africa felt no moral obligation to restore our culture. They instead, focusing on their own self-interest, socialized Africans. Socialized is when the oppressors exploits their monopoly over information that are fed into the minds of the oppressed to manipulate the oppressed to think and behave in ways that are against their own self-interest and that instead serves and protects the interests of the oppressors. This is all possible because regardless of how intelligent people are, if it's possible to control the information that they systematically receive, it's entirely possible to control what they'll believe. Because the white society controls the information that we receive, they intentionally feed us disinformation that shapes our beliefs in ways that benefits their white society. This is the true reason why many Black people now perceive ourselves as being our own worst enemies and reveres Caucasians in spite of such a brutally horrific history of the contrary. Whenever the oppressed starts thinking exactly as the oppressors wants them to do so, it's always because they've been socialized by their oppressors. Because the oppressed normalizes their mindset, they don't realize that they've been socialized. White social scientists describe this hidden nefarious practice as merely instilling a value system into the collective minds of the Black population that makes us adhere to the authority and existing infrastructure of the white dominant society. It's how the white society protects itself from massive unified Black retribution given its long history of brutally exploiting Black people. There are four ways to effectively socialize generations of people: by what they are taught, by what they see, by what they hear, and through repetition. Because the white society controls the education we're taught, the media images that we see, and the narratives that we repetitively hear, this allows them to socialize millions of Black people without us even realizing it. There's even more. To further add insult to injury, white oppressive forces deployed an offensive ideological subversion system against the African American culture to create structural cultural stupidity. Structural cultural stupidity is when the ignorant ones have been made so overconfident within their state of ignorance that it causes the intelligent ones to become intimidated, and then they become silent, thus allowing the idiotic beliefs of the ignorant ones to prevail throughout the culture, creating a culture of stupidity. Here's how they created cultural stupidity within the African American culture. After having stripped we African Americans of our true history, culture, and knowledge of ourselves during the enslavement of our ancestors, they then, beginning around 1968, began systematically feeding idiotic ideologies into our communities. Then they elevated those among us that accepted the idiotic ideologies by providing them with national media platforms. These are those among us that are the most ignorant, naive, and gullibles. But they deny national media platforms from the intelligent ones among us that speaks out and rejects the idiotic ideologies. This allows the idiotic ideologies to prevail throughout our culture, thus emboldening the ignorant ones while causing the intelligent ones to feel overwhelmed and intimidated and therefore remaining silent. This silence allows the ideologies that's accepted by the ignorant ones to prevail throughout our culture, creating a culture of stupidity. This is the true reason why millions of African Americans now self-identifies by the N-word, calls our women B's and H's, glorifies pimps, sags our pants. Those noted things were fed into our community by white media propagandists. Those of us who are the most ignorant, gullible, and naive accepted those noted ideologies. Those idiotic ideologies were then amplified in the media, being depicted as cool and trendy, thus emboldening the ignorant among us while causing the intelligent ones to feel overwhelmed and remaining silent. This silence allows the idiotic ideology to prevail throughout the African American culture, creating cultural stupidity. Not all wars are fought on the battlefield. Most are fought in the mind. Through their monopoly over information that we receive, white oppressive forces are waging a covert war against our minds. They've literally created a prison for our minds. It's a fact that most Black people must recognize in order to develop the proper counter strategies that are necessary in order to truly liberate ourselves and emancipate our minds. You know, if you research narcissism and then research the oppressor's history, you'll find that narcissism is their culture. Whenever narcissists control all of the information that we receive, they'll always feed us lies that shapes our minds, that give them greater power over us. It's the way they are. It's the way they've always been. And it's the only way they know how to be. Whenever narcissists are in power, corruption is inevitable because they are narcissists. It is time to elevate our minds above idiotic beliefs and start recognizing the truth of our plight and condition. Because if our understandings remain flawed, then all of our liberating strategies that stems from those misunderstandings will also remain flawed. This is why those of us who know the truth must teach. African proverb.